So guys, what's the best way of fitting your Oxford heated grips to your Tuono? Well, this is the way I've gone about it. So watch on and you'll see the techniques that I've used. In the pack you get the controller, the two heated grips and various sort of mounting bracketry as well. The instruction manual is pretty good. What I did to start with was just sort of got it all out, and I did actually set it all up and give it a bit of a trial test on the bench as well, just to make sure that it was all working. So I'm all ready with my bike there. I've got all my bench laid out, and I just did it step by step. I didn't use any of the bracketry stuff in the end, but again, you'll see how I do it. And you all know how to do this stuff, you know, taking the basics of the bike off, the rear cover there and the seat, just a couple of screws. You all know how to do this, but you know, I thought I'd video it anyway. What I do find is that by making these little videos as well, I've always notoriously sort of rushed jobs like this in the past, but by doing all the different camera angles and doing these little videos, I find it slows me down, and I just take my time a lot more, and I end up with a much better quality result. So I mean, there is a benefit for myself in doing these little videos, even if nobody else ever watches them. So yeah, just be careful when you take these side panels off. There's a little bit of Velcro behind, but then the tabs be especially important with those, that you don't break them. So I'll just show you me taking the one side off, but I did take both side panels off, as you'll see a little bit later on in the video. Couple of mounting screws here that holds the tank down, and you'll see why I undo these in a moment. It's just so that I can lift the tank up a little bit so that I can route the cabling through the bike. And what I decided to focus on first was getting the wiring harness all set up in the bike. Then the front screw that holds the tank on, just taking that out as well. And you'll see why I've got that reel of tape there in just a moment. So yeah, lifting the tank up, and it just enables me to hold it up so that when I'm putting the wiring through, I've got just enough space to do it. So now I'm working on, this is the controller module for the heated grips and the various connectors. I've already cut it down a bit and stripped it down because you do get quite a lot of cabling with the kit, and I wanted to optimize the setup on the bike. So yeah, just cutting the connectors out, shortening some of the cables, extending other bits. And what you'll see me doing here as well is just, you know, stripping the cables, soldering them together and putting some heat shrink sleeving on, just to make the joints and the connections as best as they possibly can be as well. It also obviously helps waterproof all the joints, which, you know, over time with rain and weather can deteriorate. So it's always best, you know, taking the time now when you're doing this job to do it as best as you can. I was careful as well at each stage to make sure that I was getting the polarity of the wires connected up correctly. I mean, this was pretty straightforward, but again, at each stage I would actually go back and retest, you know, on the bench, and just make sure that the grips are working and that the controller enables you to get all the different heat settings as well. So that's just sort of finishing off on the power cabling. You get that on the bike. And I've just got a little craft heat gun that I use to shrink the heat shrink sleeving down. Works quite well. So yeah, just using that now. Okay, now we're doing another bench test. So just plugging the controller in. I've got a bench power supply there. So you've got 12 volt battery on your bike, but when the bike's actually running, the alternator normally run up to like 14 volts or something like that. So I'll set the bench power supply on that. They're connecting the two heater grips in. That's got, I think it's a 5 amp fuse, but I do actually cut that out because the way I connect this harness onto the bike is through the existing battery tender flying lead. It's already on the bike, so that's already fused. You'll see it a bit later on, but I don't actually need that extra fuse there. So now turning it on, it's not drawing any current, but then as soon as you switch that controller on, you can see it's jumping up to what, nearly 4 amps there. So it's pulling 4 amps, and then you'll see me grabbing those heated grips, and I could feel they were getting warm, so it was all working quite nicely. So yeah, you've got like 30%, 40%, 50%, 70 and 100%, and they do get really quite hot. All good, working perfectly. Now I've got the cabling on the bike, so I've routed it through. After this little bit of the video, you'll see where I've run the cabling, but this is at the plug-in now, where I plug into the battery tender. So I'm just tinning up the ends, and then I've got the new connector pieces I'm putting on there. So yeah, they're the connectors that push into the little plastic block. And again, what I did here is using my multimeter, just double checked on the polarity. So that's the existing lead that's off for the battery for when I plug my bike into the battery tender, the Optimate thing. So I'm just utilising that for the heated grips. That's what they're going to plug into. Positive to positive, making sure I get the polarity right. And there we go, putting them into the little plastic connector block. So now what we can do is try it again. So that's the flying battery lead, that's the cable going to the controller and the heated grips that's routed through the bike now. Plug that in. So that should be powering the controller. So I'll go up to the controller end. Clicking up, yeah, so the controller's working. That's all good. And then just disconnecting that again, moving on to the next little job. So that's the harness basically out of the way and fitted on the bike. Oh, the last bit, yeah, just taking this fairing screw out so I can just pass the cable through, so then it's actually in the right place, and it's all tucked behind the fairing. Stick that screw back in again. Cool, so that's the controller, and now I'm following the power cable round there, round and down, and then it goes through the frame, following the same line as the throttle cable. So that passes through quite neatly. Then I fished it up through the frame, and then you can see the cable there. I've run it along the inside of the frame. That's why I had to lift the tank up, and then in and out a bit here. I did tuck it behind that zip tie there a little bit later on, but I didn't have that on the video. And then that's the power connector. So that's all done. This is the existing fuse. I think it's a 7.5 amp, so I might swap that to a 5 amp. But that's for the Optimate battery charger, and what will now be running the power for the heated grips. Good. So that's the harness all done. So this is the sticky pad thing that comes in the Oxford kit. Just sticking that on the back of the controller module, or actually sticking it on the bike to start with. And it's quite neat there that, you know, it just tucks away nicely under the bars. So a double-sided sticky pad. Put it through there. And since having done this, you know, I've ridden the bike, and even with gloves on, it's fine. You can, you know, easily get to the two buttons there. So that's that's done. That's the controller in place. Cool, just testing it again. So it's all quite nice and neat so far, and that was my main aim, really, to get a nice sort of OEM install. So they're the two other plastic connector blocks, one for each heated grip. Now we're taking the grips off. So bar ends first. And the end slug thing. And then to get the grips off, I use fairy liquid, and then you'll see in a minute a skewer to just sort of break the seal between the grip and this is the throttle side, obviously, and just run that in and out, and then you get that fairy liquid in there, and it eases it all off, and it's super simple to pull the grip off. It's the best way I've found of doing it anyway. Nice little sort of tip technique way to do it. So yeah, easily comes off, the grips come off. So now just working on the left hand bar side, same thing again. Skewering, fairy liquid in and out, breaks the seal, Bob's your uncle. Then wash it all off, get all of that soap out of the bike, let it dry out, you know, dry it all off. Right, now the little grub screw here is what holds on the traction control switches. So whip that off. There's a lot of superfluous plastic on there, so a little extra collar bit that you really don't need. And it just means you can get the left-hand bar grip much further on, much further up. So a little junior hacksaw, cut that bit off, work your way around carefully, don't want to catch the actual buttons and cause any damage. File it down a bit, just sort of tidy it all up, take your time. And then once you got that done, so that's the little bit I've cut off there, all cleaned up nice and neat. And then I did actually elongate the hole a little bit, just so that I could push it slightly further up towards the main switchgear on that left hand side handlebar. And then again, you know, just trial fitting at each stage. So this side, the grip is nice, quite nice and tight, goes on. So you've still got that little gap there, you see, between the grip and the traction control switch. So again, just making sure there's clearance and there's nothing sort of fouling on it. Get that grub screw back in to hold that in securely. And then what I do next is you take the original grip and just cut that down with a sharp blade. So you've got, you know, measure it up carefully, and then you can use that little piece to just bridge that gap and keep it all nice and neat and tidy. What you don't see on the video actually is that the ends of these grips, just where, you know, my hand is now, I'll cut those back slightly shorter as well, just to get it all to fit nice and neat. And I did actually glue that little bit of rubber there onto the traction control switch unit as well. So that was all nice. At this stage I haven't glued them on, so again, this is sort of just a trial fitment stage. On the throttle side now, this was a lot tighter actually, this one on the throttle tube. So just do it carefully, because you're twisting against the throttle stop. I was a bit worried you could damage it, but I think if you're really careful with it, you're fine. And again, you've got to make sure you leave the clearance so you're not getting any impingement there. And this is the super glue, and it is really fast setting. So that this comes in the kit with the Oxford heated grips. You want to stick plenty of that on, and you really need to have trial tested the fit before you put the glue on, because you literally get one go in, bang, job done. And then it's good to get the bar ends back on there again, just to clamp it all nice and tight as the glue's going off. Wipe off any excess as well, keep it all nice and clean. You don't want it super glue dripping everywhere. Right, so whilst we're waiting for the glue to set, I think it's time to come in the house. Oh, there's Fanta. Hello, Fanta. And I think we have a quick coffee. Fanta, here you go. Look, it's a sausage. Oh, and there's one happy dog. And let's get this coffee going. Back to the job. So we've got most of the bike back together now, with the frame panels, the seat back on, and that's the connection I make for the heated grips there, obviously. So with the grips on the bike now, we can plug those into the controller cables and then fire the bike up, and just make sure again everything is working. You'll notice I still haven't routed the cabling off the heated grips properly yet, so that's still to be done and tidied up. Again, just sort of testing it out and making sure the controller is doing what it should do, that the grips are getting hot. And it all seems to be working well, as it should be. Again, making sure the controls, you know, there's no impingement, the clutch, the front brake, traction control levers, but yeah, we're all good. So yeah, a little bit later on, let's just try it again, and we've got all the cabling pretty much done now, so firing the bike up. And then I just left it a little while just to see, you know, again, make sure, see how hot the grips are getting. They do get really hot, as I've already said. You can see I've now taped up those the connector block piece as well. And I've zip tied all the cabling now. I might tweak it a little bit just to sort of tidy it up a little bit more. You can see I've put all the connector pieces back together, but yeah, I mean, not too bad. I'm pretty pleased with that as things go. So yeah, I hope it's helped you. Any comments, please subscribe, and for any other future videos I might do. Cheers.